Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the EOS Town Hall. Today is the 25th of March. Sitting here with Kedar at LibertyBlock headquarters, ready and excited to talk about some of the voting system, the voting reward bounty system, that cooperative voting bounty system that was proposed by EOS 42, entitled What It Means for the Community, and getting you some information about some of the current proposals that are up in the system. With us today, your casting crew of either proxy or block producer representatives to talk about the latest subjects. So thank you guys all for joining me. And this morning, I think we should probably get started off with Mr. David Peckham himself, Mr. EOS 42. David, if you could lead us a little bit about the voter reward system. What brought you guys to kind of cooperative system? What brought you guys to this idea, and explain what the intention is and where we're at with it right now?
Sure. So I should probably start by saying that Ryan Betham is very much being the spearhead for both the idea and then carry it forwards in terms of helping coordinate it. So it's as the name implies, being a cooperative initiative by multiple proxies. And on that basis, therefore, no one proxy is giving up control of their own management or their own independence in any way, shape, or form. But what they are doing is making agreements with regards to targeting of outcome by block producers with regards to those rewards and the votes. So in effect, it's coordinating vote to try and achieve a certain directed outcomes. And it's been very successful in terms of getting initial sign up from the proxies, and they've set a number of, Josh, it's off on mute. And it's been very effective in terms of enabling, therefore, the initial set of deliverables to potentially be set, and a number of the block producer candidates and block producers globally have stepped forward with the likes of the history solutions and so on and so forth to actually start to deliver upon those. And they guarantee, as a reward for that, the actual votes from a series of proxies that are part of this initiative ongoing. I think last time I checked, there were about 9 or 10 proxies that were part of this initiative. Ryan will be able to confirm on that. And otherwise, it's something that's continuously going to be developing. I think we're going to see how effectively the initial two deliverables are met by the community and by the candidates themselves. And beyond that, it's going to be an interesting one. So I'll give you an example. If, for example, let's say EOS Rio ended up delivering on the first one, and they may well be a natural choice in the case of most of the proxies already anyway. So in a scenario like that, we probably need to consider as well what you would do in a situation like that, because they're already effectively being rewarded. And therefore, so you know, we're going to have to think through some of the underlying mechanisms and practicalities of this too. But outside of that, I think it's quite important that we look at also the range of other candidates that potentially are putting in a lot of time and effort to deliver out real value for the community to also try and work on a number of these solutions too. It's a pity Ryan isn't here himself, because I think he'd be able to give a much better summary of the whole initiative. But I'm certainly happy to answer all questions with regards to the coordination side of things. But I should just stress again that this is very much not about being centrally coordinating at all. It's each proxy independently managing themselves. They have full autonomy to also veto that. So as an example, a candidate starts to misbehave in some way, shape or form that goes contrary to the value set of the proxy, they are fully entitled to pull that support regardless of a potential achievement of a particular bounty in this case over, say, a 12-month period.
Well, I personally think it's a fantastic plan. You know, it's gotten a resurgence, I think, in some of the development opportunity here in the network without the without the other systems in place right now for being able to reward and incentivize engineering. You know, I think they do a great job of stepping up. We've been dealing with Ryan on it. Ryan probably isn't joining us because it's 7 a.m. here in California. I know he's.
No. I spoke to him actually. He's on another call. I'm just not sure what the call is. Unfortunately, he's on something else.
Good for him, man. He's quite the guy. You know, he's a good pickup for EOS 42. We've really enjoyed dealing with him. But getting the proxy coordination together has been important. You know, we ultimately, ourselves as a block producer, trying to figure out which direction we should, lead engineering without incentive, without a way to kind of lead forward. It's hard to know what people want and what you want to take the time to be rewarded for. You know, engineering itself is there's a couple different types of block producers that I think exist, and some of those aren't. Not all of those are very engineer heavy. We happen to be an engineering heavy block producer, so we really like seeing systems in which we can actually utilize reward and then direct through to it. There's two basic proposals up right now that were called for. Requests for RFPs, what you call it, probably in the engineering world. Requests for proposals were done. One was done for the full history and understanding the full history and doing that at scale in an open source solution for the whole full history. So either plug-in or replacement. So that's been proposed. I think there are a number of those, and we'll go through a number of what those are in a moment. But then there's also the block producer standby rotation, which is interesting. And we're going through, we ultimately did respond to that proposal. So we have a proposal there. And, we'll kind of get into some of that. Is anyone else here on the call today? Has anyone else submitted a proposal to either of the voter reward requests?
Yeah. ChainRiftEOS submitted one for the testing of the block producers standby ones.
Fantastic. Who is this that's speaking?
Luka Petric.
Luka, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at. So yeah, it's good.
I'm in Europe.
So. Okay, well, good afternoon then.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. So we've got your proposal actually up, and we're happy to discuss it. I think that especially between your organization and our organization, we're the only two that are up for the standby rotation.
There is another one.
There is another one? Great.
Yeah.
So I'll pull that up as well.
There are three. There's also NodeOne that is suggesting something that is very different. Basically, all the three different submissions right now are very different.
Sweet. We are happy to do whatever as long as there's a direction kind of provided. Let's see if we can get up the three right now and go over the differences between and what people are thinking and what people ultimately want. Ultimately now you've got three block producers that have stood up with engineering, and hopefully the idea behind this is the proxies themselves can go into the referendums. They can vote for a solution to whatever it's going to be proposed to do it. Ideally, whatever they are, I'm not sure if we're going to get direction. Maybe David, you could explain to us how the process, you expect the process to happen to where, where do we consider the direction to go ahead and execute? The time spent writing a proposal is not that bad. Everyone's happy to write a proposal. But the time spent to actually engineer a solution takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. So, what in the process should people expect after the proposal deadline is due? You've got a number of proposals that are up, and then what should people expect next in the process to be able to understand when to move forward?
So, in terms of that, then it really comes down to needing to carry out a robust and technical assessment of the different options in a scenario like this, where you have, for example, 3 to 4 different, quite radically different proposals with regards to how to handle the standby rotation issue. And one example of that, where we kicked that off, was a discussion with, and I won't name them, but somebody fairly senior within the technical side of Block 1 to get their opinion, for example, on the LibertyBlock solution, and to understand what the view was with regards to that versus a perhaps arguably more pragmatic and easier to implement solution like ChainRift have come up with, which also, in all scenarios, I think what you're able to do is pick out strengths and weaknesses with regards to each of these sorts of solutions. And I think that that's what needs to be completed in terms of an assessment for each of the underlying solutions is a strengths and weaknesses. It's basically a SWOT analysis of that to understand fully whether or not these are going to be long-term. Will it be scalable? You know, you could throw in, for example, if memory serves on the ChainRift solution, one of it relates to using voting power. And then we have a scenario, what happens, for example, if some major other previously unvoting accounts come in and potentially then start to impact that, and the ability to move a single player in and out of the top 21, is that really the sort of solution that we would want to do? Is that fair on necessarily the guys currently in 21st place who are going to drop out, perma drop out, and so on and so forth? And that's, Luka, I may be paraphrasing you, so if I've misunderstood the mechanics of the solution, I think that was quite a pragmatic one that you'd come up with as a way of handling this early, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I think that has to be done for all of the different solutions to fully ensure that we understand which of the solutions where there are multiple is going to be both the technically and the most cost-effective solution to actually put in place, with long-term scaling also being understood for the network needs over time. And once that is reached, then at that point, the selection can be made. And it really is going to be, I think, also needs to be agreed by the proxy managers themselves. So they're independently going to need to take part in reviewing that assessment, that SWOT assessment when it's completed. And at that point, we're going to be in a position then for a decision to be made and for them to be able to push forward whichever team it is that's selected for that.
That's great. Who's completing the SWOT analysis, David? Is that yourself?
That's definitely Ryan that's been completing that, although he is slightly busy the last week. We've had a bit on internally in the team with a project we're working on. So with regards to that, when that's about to ease off from his side, and I think then he'll really be able to push this forwards for us all, and we'll be in a position then where a selection needs to be made. So, I mean, if I may as well just summarize at a very high level, for example, when we had the discussion with the unnamed senior dev in block 1, they were actually not able to pick any flaws, for example, in the LibertyBlock solution beyond quite a purist look at the network with regards to saying, I can't recall the exact phrase that they came back with. It was ultimately some concerns around necessarily the ultimate performance of the network to the highest possible degree. Whereas my counter perspective is very much, and one of the reasons I think we're all looking at doing this is that there's a huge potential gain for the network from a security perspective and the use of things like rewards and amongst the standbys and so on and so forth. If we're able to ensure that those standbys in paid positions are indeed actually able to provide the redundancy the network ought to be having, a network of this quality. So to me, I feel it's absolutely worth any short-term concerns that were raised regarding, I think the concern raised was, oh, well, you might rotate somebody in who has a series of missed blocks and fails. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, yeah, no shit, that's exactly what may well end up happening in that short-term period. And that's how we identify exactly who action needs to be taken against with regards to them potentially no longer being considered to be an able candidate. And so to my mind, I see that as a cost worth paying. And I think from a more engineering perspective, if you're looking at it from the network performance perspective, you wouldn't see it that way. And so that's the sort of grey area that we're going to encounter with this sort of thing. And when we're assessing solutions, we therefore need to also consider both types of perspectives, because it's not necessarily clearly black or white.
We are a really big fan of how the system is shaping up, David. So thank you guys for your efforts on it. This hopefully, as we go through this more often, it'll become more clear to the voter proxies themselves, and we can kind of have a better signal on doing this as we're all kind of getting through this for the first time. Ryan's been great. We'll expect the SWOT analysis, I'm assuming, this week. He's been usually on everything.
Yeah, I'll talk to him as soon as I get off this town hall call, and I'll be able to come back to everybody with regards to when we're going to be ready to produce something out. And it's probably going to be an ongoing discussion point, because I would suspect that all of those who propose solutions are going to want to have a great deal of input into this process too. But when we get to that perspective, that point, the proxies themselves will then be able to also start to complete their assessments as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we were trying to provide here through Town Hall is the ability for everyone to kind of talk about their solutions. Since a couple of us are here. Luka, why don't you from ChainRift discuss your solution, where people can find your proposal, and a little bit about your team, what you guys want to build.
Right. Hi, everybody. So, well, the proposal is up on the referendum right now. So
what's the title? What's the title of your proposal so people can find it on the referendum?
Well, it's long. It's voter enforced standby block producer rotation.
We'll include the link here below so people will be able to find it.
They can also search for ChainRift account, and then they will just find it because it was proposed from ChainRift account. Okay, yeah, so basically we have a dedicated team for EOS, and we're building a couple of smart contracts. For instance, RAM token is up. That's like a wrapper token, so that exchanges can basically list a RAM itself. It's just back to the token. Okay, so and then we see this this bounty, and we basically verify the code, go through it, and well, we find how we can basically do it in a couple of steps. So our solution is basically 3-step solution. We are not really sure that block producers will sign in everything that it's produced by the bounty. That's probably one thing we didn't really think through as a well. Whenever we produce anything, block producers can just say, well, we don't understand this. We are not sure how this will affect everything, and we will just not sign it in. So we started with the opt-in solution. An opt-in solution is basically, so proxies can, or any voter, can just delegate one of the spots to this smart contract. This is just, they just call to actions, and basically that will give, delegate one of the spots. And when they do that, the contract basically orchestrates which spot this will go to. So it takes the list of all the block producers that are in it for testing, and then it goes over that list in a random fashion. And it only chooses the ones that can be put into 21 spot. So if there is not enough votes, then it just doesn't test them. So from that perspective, there's nothing problematic if there is not enough votes. That just means that less VPs will be tested. Also from the perspective of the block rewards, basically we put block producers in to produce 6 blocks, and then basically they just go out again. So basically there is a switch to 21 spot and then out again. So the reward itself doesn't get affected that much. Let me think about, okay. So the second phase is basically to take all this ordering and list and just put it into EOSYS contract. This one needs, basically this is a soft fork. It needs to multi-sig, 15 out of 21 need to sign it in this mode, we basically don't need voters anymore. And we can also set a couple of enforcement. So for instance, if if the block producer that gets rotated in, it misses its block, it can be unracked right away. Just by contract can do it. There is no need for multisig to step in because, as we know, block producers don't really like to sign any other one out. There could be like a problem because they know each other or something like that. So it's better to just write this logic into the contract itself. And now there's like a question, okay, so we unrack them and then can just register right away. So we were thinking what could be the solution for that. And from our perspective is basically if they get unracked 2 times in a row, there should be like a waiting time, let's say 15 days, that they cannot register anymore for 15 days. So in this way, they basically get a penalty on them missing 2 blocks. Well, no, not 2 blocks, basically 2 rounds in a row. And so if we check how many rotations and testing we can do with our proposal, there is, well, we are trying to match, to make sure that there is no too much rotation because there are proofs. Whenever we check standby BPs, there need to be proofs provided for IBC. It's for inter-blockchain communication. So we basically need to take this into consideration. And what we came up with is basically, let's just do 1 rotation per 2 hours on average. And because we rotate in and out right away, that means basically 1 rotation. Well, there are 2 rotations, but basically 1 test per 4 hours, which brings us to basically around 10 days that all standby BPs can be tested in around 10 days. And if they miss in both rounds, they get unregistered and then also apply the penalty of 15 days. Of course, this can be discussed, and we wanted to get proper feedback and reviews from Block 1 engineers as well. But that's kind of where we're at right now. And then we were also thinking about just the fact that transaction as a proof of stake, TEPOS is basically would be used for a random selection of these standby block producers.
모르겠어. 잠깐 이따 확인해볼게.
Okay, so we don't really believe that that's safe. The main problem with that is that basically a block producer can just grind the state and can help basically select the next rotation in and can influence it. So we also propose random beacon. Well, that one is a bit long, so I will probably just stop here. But it's like additional smart contract that provides a random beacon so that it can be used when testing the standby block producers.
Thank you for that, Luka. Why don't we have a couple of comments that might be able to respond to that. Luke Stokes, do you have any comments about that solution?
I was just actually reading through the Google Doc as it was being described. Definitely sounds interesting. I mean, when it comes to things like this at a very, very low level, like we're talking about the actual Byzantine fault tolerance of the system, I'm definitely going to defer to people like, Scott from Gray Mass and obviously Dan Larimer and others. So I'm encouraged to hear that it's being discussed at a pretty low level with some of the, core Block 1 people that understand this. But on the surface, it seems very interesting. I guess, as a proxy myself, I still have some questions about the kind of CVIB a process. I mean, I'm just looking here, like ChainRift, you guys are like 130 something. So it's like, definitely, I think it would be great to, if you're providing this great value, to move up in those ranks and get into a paid position and all that stuff. But it seems a little strange. I'm just kind of reading through the proxy discussion that kind of says, hey, I'm going to vote for you for this period of time, or maybe I'm not, and I'm going to specify a period of time. And then even then, maybe I'll back out of it and give a reason on chain for why I did. And it just seems very loose to me. So I'm always kind of not a fan of creating expectations if they can't be, if they're not good expectations, right? Because then people just get frustrated. Either they're not met or they're poorly communicated and not met. So it's not so much I have a concern with the ChainRift proposal itself. Again, I'd want to defer to people who understand the Byzantine fault tolerance, potential attack vectors or concerns. Having been on Steam for a while now, where they randomly rotate in, the 21st block producer based on the standbys, I think that's great. I think that's something that I kind of wanted to see EOS have from the beginning, but I was told, no, you can't do that. EOS is different than Steam. The half-second, block times make that rotation too complicated, and so it was, I was told it can't be done. But now it's like, well, maybe it can be, and if it can be, I think I'm for it. It's more so just the kind of CVIB thing. Like, as a proxy, I officially haven't said I was going to support that. Now, at the same time, I hope I'm constantly adjusting my votes based on who's adding value to the system. So I would think that if somebody came out and did a project that was really great like this, and then continued to be an ongoing valuable participator to the network. For me, my vote is not based on like, splash in the pan, I did one great thing. My vote on block producers is based on their trustworthiness. That's how I think DPoS is a secure system. Different projects, I would hope, get funded through means that are designed to fund different projects, and not necessarily saying, we did one thing once that was great, so I'm going to trust you for 12 months. It's like, well, my trust on someone is based on their daily action, right? Like, so that's why I still have a little confusion on the proxy vote being a way to fund really great projects like this. But having reviewed the project itself, I'm considering giving in an approval vote.
We definitely hear you there, Luke. This in its early methods of operation here for EOS, it's tough. We're a very technically inclined block producer over here at LibertyBlock. Determining what we're going to spend our time on is difficult. Like, understanding that we have the technical capability to go execute, but technical execution takes a great amount of time. And determining what is the kind of intention of voters' participation is like super important to us. There's a lot of things that we can come create and build, but in all honesty, in this world of many protocols, in this world of a lot of chains and outside incentive to build other things, a lot of our team is involved with a lot of different projects themselves. We here at Ikigai, we have a number of different things that we support and things that we work on. Our partnership with some of the members of Everpedia, like Kedar here, there's time and value that we have to understand. And so if we're not being a political BP, when we're not doing all the community outreach, but more so we want to be involved in the technical exploration because that's where we shine. We really need to get the push from the proxies or push from the large voter communities, which really is the proxies right now. If we're not a community, if we don't have the outreach, say, that EOS New York has for their community, which they've done a great job at, but we feel like we are more technically inclined than many of the VPs. This is a great way. I like this idea or the concept, at least, for sounds good. If that's what the proxies want to see solution for, getting some technical providers able to go do that should come with some sort of reward. We've liked the idea previously of the reward system that was going to be created, and it's not yet implemented. So, if it's not going to be for a direct payment for some of these solutions, then, not as as a reward, the voting system has at least spurred a few people to be like, yeah, we'll step up, we'll go take and we'll go execute on the, this is probably a plus week assignment for us to do on a solution. So knowing that there's going to be a reward based on that right now is something that's important to a lot of people. And I really love seeing producers like ChainRift. You know, they are hanging out in the 130 space. Not many people, I'd heard about them, but I hadn't talked to them. But seeing that they're now stepping up and that they're going to provide some potential solution, I think is a direct result of this reward system. So as things clear out, I personally like at least where the direction's headed. You're exactly right, though. There's not a, you know, it's not a process yet. You know, I think this was thrown together by Ryan Betham and some of the team there at EOS 42 in an effort to kind of like usher people along into solutions. So at least it's gotten people moving, you know.
I fully support that it's gotten people moving, and that's why I didn't want to, with my comments on it, didn't want to discourage people on the process, because I fully support the process of getting things going forward. I also too want to make sure that we're learning from the comparable systems in the space. So like, you know, BitShares has a worker proposal system, other chains do. Steam, you may know, you know, today I think is their 3rd anniversary. They are actually in the process of a community hard fork. Hard fork 21 is being developed by Block Trades. You know, Dan from, not Dan Larimer, but another Dan from early BitShares and Steam days is building a hard fork that actually implements a worker proposal system in the Steam blockchain. The rewards on the Steam block production used to be high, and people had this expectation that the witnesses, that's what they call them, were providing products to the system. And eventually they realized that just doesn't really work, doing product based on block production, because you had these weird alignments that were like, yeah, you're creating this great project we all want, you know, that the community really desires, but maybe you're not very good at block production. You're missing blocks, you're not communicative, we can't get a hold of you on security updates. Like, and so we realized there are actually 2 different categories of expertise. And again, back to that word trust, that's the way I look at it. Being a block producer is all about trust. So you're going to reliably produce blocks. And so they eventually lowered the block production rewards on the Steam blockchain quite a bit, substantially. This is, I think, before I was a witness, to make it clear, we want to pay you, incentivize you to produce blocks, but we're not expecting you to launch these major projects because, and what that ended up doing, for example, brought about Steam Monsters. Steam Monsters is a very highly profitable game on Steam that's like, you know, for a while was pulling in 100 grand a month and 50 grand a month. It was the idea of, if you're going to create a great thing, then, you know, make profit out of it. Now we have this other category, of course, that we're discussing now, which is like, it's not really an application. It's more a fundamental low level, system level design aspect of EOS itself. And those kind of things, I think, fall in these kind of gray area category. We can't really do, you can't build a profitable business off it. So it's not going to be rewarded that way. And the block producer rewards themselves might be enough to do it, but maybe not. And especially not if you're in the lower ranks. So I would love to see, you know, it's still push towards a worker proposal system of some kind. And we've got this 4% just sitting there with that original intention. It would be interesting to see if we had a clear direction, if the block producers might signal to say, hey, look, you know, we did the proxy thing, and the amount of money that, for another example, it may not even change a whole lot. Proxies might already be voting for these people that are doing great things already. So the reward level may not change. So it would be interesting to see if there's a little like cherry on top where they might say, hey, look, let's actually take a risk and tap into some of these funds that are originally designed for this purpose and say, we're going to fund this to a certain amount. And it would be interesting. I think it would kind of along the same lines, it would get the community all fired up and say, oh my gosh, this is good or this is bad. But either way, it would get people talking about it.
I mean, I would love to see a worker proposal system implemented, you know, and that's kind of been some of the original expectation, but getting that done, you know, we again are struggling getting much pushed forward in this chain at all for action. So getting us to a point of a worker proposal system sounds like a sci-fi fantasy proposed idea here, because, you know, I just don't see us getting to that point anytime soon. And we have some glaring issues with the network, and some of the lower level, not sexy, not fun, not reward inducing application creation to the base of the network. And that's, you know, really what we're talking about right now. Standby rotations and not a sexy product that anyone needs to build, but we understand because of some of the BPs that have gone into place that some of the BPs aren't really ready to produce blocks, and we need to be able to identify what those are, and make sure that they're doing that properly. And the other solution, the full history node solution, making sure that that's available for people to run as an engineering solution. Again, it's not something that you can really do with another incentive. So it's for us, it's always been, okay, we love a worker proposal system because we know we could go out and we could go tag and bag and tag a bunch of those bounties, but that doesn't exist yet. So in the interim, I've really loved this idea and this concept, because you're going to wake up some of the more engineering heavy BPs that are ready to go and implement. There's a lot of this stuff is stuff that we're happy to go do. We just need to see what direction, because you're not getting the voter turnout based on performance right now. We believe in the network as it exists. The network as it exists, has a number of BPs that are getting elected for other reasons. And so, some of them rightfully so. Some other, block producers believe that, if they're not as technically apt and they haven't been able to produce some of the things that are part of this network, hopefully we have a system that gets rewarded and we have other people out there to vote and push them in. Kedar, why don't you speak a little bit about the LibertyBlock solution? What's going on there? I'm going to grab a power cable. Why don't you discuss that? I'll be right back.
Yeah, the LibertyBlock solution is a little bit similar, I guess, to the Steam solution. We rotate in, so we're talking about, right now we're thinking about rotating in 5 producers. That number is not really, we haven't really figured out what exactly the number should be there. Initially, we were thinking 15 to 20. That seems to be too much. Then we brought it down to 5. The advantage of, so what we want to do is we want to do it as a hard fork to the EOS chain itself. And the advantage of this would be that it would reduce the number of schedule changes that occur. So Luka was talking about the number of schedule changes that come out from the smart contract. I think it's 2, so 2 every 4 hours. Or 2 every 2 hours. Whatever the rotation period ends up being, there's going to be 2 schedule changes every time. And that really affects IBC. At the moment, we average about 8 hours between schedule rotations, which is very totally doable for IBC. If we're going to be increasing that to basically once an hour, that's going to be 8 times as many schedule rotations, which means it's going to take 8 times as much space to run a light client anywhere. So if we code it directly into the chain, we can create the schedule, we can modify the schedule in a way that it accommodates the rotating producers as well. Besides that, it's going to be the same solution, very similar to the solution from ChainRift. The only difference is how we think we're going to implement it. Do we implement it as a hard fork, where it's built into the system, and it's kind of like a first-class citizen, or do we do it as a smart contract that proxies and stuff vote into? So the disadvantage would obviously be that we actually have to hard fork and include it in the hard fork.
Any questions or comments or responses to that?
I have a question about the hard fork portion. Kedar, can you go into a little bit more detail in terms of how you envisioned that happening and what you envisioned that having as an effect, and what the current block producers would have to do in order to make that happen?
I know Block One right now. Block One's scheduled a hard fork. They have a bunch of changes ready to go for a hard fork. At some point, there is going to be a hard fork happening on the chain to make a bunch of chain improvements. We imagine, so this one, I imagine in this one, what we'd have to do is we'd have to change the schedule. So the way the schedule is stored would have to change. The way some of the EOSIO.prods accounts are handled, where there's 21 right now, we'd have to add in rotating producers. And we'd have to figure out how to handle the multi-sig between the producers. So I guess every one of the backup producers would get like a portion of the weight for the, so if there was 5 producers, they would each get like 0.2 of the weight for the final 21st vote. And I guess it would just have to be implemented. Whenever Block One decides to do that hard fork, they'd have to include this and that. So we'd actually need to get buy-in from Block One as well.
Have you reached out, or have you, I mean, I guess that was part of the reason why I was asking, because I knew of the hard fork that they've been talking about. Do you know a sense of timeline of when that would happen? And would you be able to potentially even sync up with them so that it happens all at once? Do you know if that's...
If you decide to go down the road, we would sync up with them, yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's the interesting part about these solutions. Like, for us, getting a solution implemented, you know, I'm gracious when I say it's going to take 3 or 4 weeks. It's really going to take a bunch of work, a couple of guys, you know, cracking it out over a long weekend, you know, then going into a testing period and getting it ready to go. You know, whether or not we hit this hard fork or potentially the next hard fork, because there will be one, is up to, I think, the principles of kind of some of the proxy reward. Getting a team of 3 or 4 really talented engineers scheduled to go through and really dive deep into this takes incentive. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, we do like this incentive model. But, you know, I think like ourselves, like a few other teams, we're looking for that sort of model. And being able to push something like this, we just want to make sure you're doing it right, because, you know, without direction, you could have 2, 3, 4 different proposals, and it doesn't make any sense for these, you know, very talented engineering teams to all be working on them to create them for them maybe to be introduced to a chain. And then it's an extended amount of engineering effort that has to go into these solutions. So, you know, we do like this idea of directed solution, getting what the voters want to see, and, you know, driving that from the idea of the large pools of voting. It, you know, does make sense here. So for us in particular, it's not a question of you know, can we get this done in time? It's you know, is this what's wanted? Because going through this and lifting the engineering effort to get the solution done takes an immense amount of effort, and we want to make sure that it's the right effort, and it's going to be rewarded to go through that lift. So, you know, you know, I think we're happy to do it. It's just we want to make sure that it's the solution that's going to be chosen, rather than going through an effort of engineering for it not to be implemented, or for it to just fall on deaf votes in the system. So, you know, excited about that. You know, also excited that Jay Cheng has joined us this morning. Jay, you see you in and out of video there. Why don't you turn your video on? You know, are you excited about the voter proxy reward system that's going on here? How you doing this morning?
What's up? Pretty tired from traveling. As you can see, I can't speak English right now, but yeah, I mean, I actually didn't hear about this a lot before. I think one of the toughest parts will actually be to raise awareness about this stuff.
Yep.
Because yeah, I feel like referendums are just extremely hard to pass. And as for the proxy voting change, where you give guaranteed votes, I agree with a lot of the points Luke raised earlier. But at the same time, if it's not a system-related change, why do we have to rely on a full referendum proposal? Couldn't just individual proxies try to enforce this on their own? And I feel like there's a lot of proxies that you can't even communicate with, and they don't want to communicate. So I'm not sure how exactly that would play out.
Yeah, I think that's some of the idea behind this, Jay, is the fact that, you know, this isn't a full referendum. You know, we stuck the ideas up on referendum because that was a place for them to at least be up and visible. But ultimately, it's not necessarily a full referendum. The idea behind this is that the voter proxies can look at these, can look at the solutions. If they want that solution developed, they, you know, say, yes, you know, I want this solution developed. They sign up behind it, they vote for it. And then ultimately, within some arbitrary amount of period, which maybe David can talk to about, you know, when these solutions are supposed to be pushed forward, then, you know, there should be hopefully a clear push from one of the, you know, from the proxies themselves, saying that if you do develop this, you know, we will reward you by voting for your efforts. So, you know, that's what we're trying to get to, at least, and trying to get some participation with these proxies, saying that that's a solution they'd like to develop. You know, for me, whether or not it's implemented really is inconsequential, you know, like because it's the effort of engineering that's going to have to go behind these things that matters. And it'd be good to see the voters, the proxies or otherwise, you know, kind of put their vote where their desire for the network is, and to where we can see people kind of say, yes, we know and we understand that it takes a tremendous amount of time to engineer these solutions. We'd be willing to offer you our vote for the efforts of that work that it would take. And by doing so, I'm voting for this change. And if that change is ultimately engineered and not even necessarily implemented, I think that would be deserving potentially of some of the voter proxy.
Yeah, for sure. I also feel like for this to really pan out, you would need more proxies and more total votes that are all sort of in agreement with this proposal. Because if you only have, like, let's say a total of 1 million votes that are in for this, then it's sort of less stakes for the developers and block producers to try to solutions. Yeah, but if you have like 20, 30 million, then it's a huge incentive for block.
Well, you got 30 million right now is the current reward, or as it stated. So the way that David, and I don't know, Jay, if you've seen yet his Medium post based on cooperative voting. I'm going to post it in our town hall channel. The concept of it, the proxies that are connected to it have a total of about, as of February 10th, that it was 26 million votes. Now it's about 29 million votes. So the reward level is substantial. The reward level, if there's not a direction right now with the proxies for them to all combine. It is tough to coordinate. Even the visibility of the proxies has been tough to coordinate. One of the concepts behind this call was they've all signed up for this Medium post. They've all decided that they were going to be part of this cooperative voting infrastructure. Now that some of these early proposals have come out, trying to get them familiar with some of the options is what we're trying to at least raise awareness of, because ourselves, ChainRift, NodeOne, we've taken the time to do the proposals and put them up on a referendum for people to see. Now we're waiting for those proxies that stood up and are a part of the CVIB to go ahead and indicate which one of these solutions they want. And then for us to be able to implement, it would be based on the direction that their kind of proxy votes, or their indication of voting towards, would go forthwith. David, why don't you speak a little bit about trying to get those guys organized and at least gaining visibility here to where we can get the next step of direction.
Okay, so I managed to get hold of Ryan just enough to let him know the expectation that's been set with regards to this week, trying to get out the analysis such as it stands on the existing proposals. And I think in terms of as a timeline thereafter, we should look to therefore coordinate and have the proxies then complete their independent reviews of those. I will talk to Ryan after this meeting as well in terms of next steps and timelines, and I will ask him to therefore talk to the individual proxies and see if we can publish something out that provides that, because I agree with you right now. I don't think anything has been published out that gives that clarity of the process, and to some extent I think we are defining it as we go through, hence why it's a little bit uncertain for those who have taken the time and effort to put these in. I agree with you though on the other sentiment that the fact that the cooperative venture has got to such a size here means that it's substantially meaningful. It could be the difference between being outside the producer zone or in, which is a big deal. And then with that comes all of the profile that various block producers can need to establish or re-establish themselves as well. And it can, again, make a huge difference for those outside the pay zone and potentially those who are then going to start to receive ongoing income. So I think it serves the purpose for what proxies are really there to do, which is to direct voter power right down at the individual level to achieve meaningful action within the network. I do think it was interesting hearing Luke's history lesson relating to how Steam has evolved, actually. So it probably does give us some food for thought in the longer term as to how all of this could end up developing out. We shall see. But in terms of that, though, I will commit, therefore, to follow up with Ryan to get something out this week for everybody with regards to analysis of the solutions and also a timeline.
That's fantastic. And I appreciate your direction in this, and it is just this concept of letting those proxies serve their role and kind of give direction to where some of the chain wants to move. And I agree, that's really a role that the proxies serve. Going back for the lessons that have been on other DPoS systems and how they'll shake out long term. That is a goal, and we'll all be learning along those timelines. But hopefully, we'll be getting some of the solutions that we need in the meantime for this. It's really why we hold these, and I don't call them meetings here, David. We're just a bunch of friends here talking in an open forum. So thank you for joining us this morning. Before we close out, does anyone have anything to say? Josh?
Yeah. I just want to let you guys know, about a month or so ago, when right after this was first proposed, I just did a quick analysis to see, let's say someone was receiving a lot of votes from these proxies already, or not receiving a lot of votes. Like, would this actually help people, considering the teams that might be available to receive the votes? It was touched on earlier in the call. Basically, I looked at about 85 different VPs, basically everyone who was receiving votes from any of those proxies that were listed. I think it was about 15 or 16 of them would not receive a meaningful amount of votes. And I defined meaningful by less than, I think, 7 million votes. But the average that a BP would receive if they were included in this, because their proposal was accepted, is about 20 million or 19.5 million. This is as of a month ago. And if you disregard those about 15 teams that were already being voted by most of those proxies, the average is around 23.5 million votes. So it is a substantial amount, other than for those about 15 teams. And I can give you guys a list of who those teams are. I just think it's important everyone knows, and it may not be worth their time, may be worth their time, despite the benefit for the community as a whole.
Well, that's great, Josh, and that analysis of those things, I think that would be best served as a comment on the CVIB Medium post. I'll post it below as well for this content. But thank you for that. I think that is meaningful. And even those that are receiving the proxy votes, part of the CVIB was the pledge of a time of how long the vote might be. So even if you are a team that has received votes from one of the larger proxies, Shintai or Starkness, being able to know that this particular solution, whatever it is, might be a year-long reward, to where you understand that's assuming that you're doing a good job as a producer and not missing blocks left and right, that you might have a longer reward for that execution work. So I think that the system it's great. It's drawn up interest. We've got some developers that are really looking to push forward things, including us. So proxies, we love your direction. We thank you for joining this solution. We thank Ryan Betham for that solution over our ES42 with David. That's about it from here on our side. Appreciate everyone out here listening, watching, caring about this network. I will mention, if you're still listening, subscribe to EOS Town Hall. We have an EOS Town Hall discussion on Telegram as well. If you are a BP or a proxy and you'd like to get involved, we do these live on Monday mornings at, it's probably going to adjust to 9 a.m. PST after this week. We've been doing them at 7 a.m. PST up until this point. We love your participation. This is an open forum. The idea is that the world should, in a transparent way, be understanding some of the thoughts and how to build and how to grow this network. So thank you, everyone, for attending. And until next week, this is Tim Lewis with LibertyBlock, EOS Town Hall. Have a great week ahead. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.